Welcome to Talk Treatises. We are back, and today we are looking at one of the most, I think, intellectually daring books ever written.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a book that tries to solve the one problem that keeps everyone from theologians to, tired parents awake at night.
It is the heavy lifter of Western philosophy. It really is. It's the kind of book that if you drop it on your foot, it breaks your toe. And if you drop it on your worldview, it might just break your brain.
We are talking about the problem of evil. And specifically, we are diving into the work of the German genius, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. The book is titled Theodicy, Essays on the Goodness of God, the Freedom of Man, and the Origin of Evil.
Which is, that is a title that basically promises to explain everything that has ever gone wrong in the history of the universe. No small task.
Exactly. And look, before we get into the weeds, let's just state the mission for this deep dive. We have this massive text from 1710. We have the historical context of the Enlightenment, and we have a listener base that, let's be honest, looks at the news, sees war, sees disease, sees injustice, and asks, if there is a God, and he's supposed to be good, what on earth is he doing?
It's the ultimate question. It truly is. And Leibniz is one of the few people who didn't just ask it. He claimed to have solved it.
He claimed to have the receipts. So for today, I'm going to be the inquirer. I'm going to try to drag these high-flying metaphysical concepts down to the pavement where we actually live.
And I'll be the synthesizer. My job is to try and connect the dots on Leibniz's system, which is really a mix of theology, law, and some really advanced mathematics, the whole architecture.
So let's start with the big question, the problem of evil.
Yeah.
At its core, it's a logic puzzle, isn't it?
It is. It's a classic trilemma. You have three propositions, three statements that seem like they can't all be true at the same time.
Okay, what are they?
Proposition 1. God is omnipotent, all-powerful. He can do anything.
Got it.
Proposition 2. God is omnibenevolent, all good. He wants what is best.
Yeah.
Proposition 3. Evil exists.
And the conflict is obvious. If he's all-powerful, he could stop the evil. And he's all good, he would want to stop the evil. But the evil is there.
Right.
So the skeptic says, something has to give. Either he's not powerful, he's not good, or maybe he's just not there.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, that's where the conversation just ends. They look at a tsunami or a children's hospital ward and they say, the math doesn't add up. The pieces don't fit.
But Leibniz steps in and says, actually, let me check the math. And that's where we get this word he invented, theodicy.
Right. A term he actually coined in this book. It comes from the Greek theos, meaning God, and dike, meaning justice.
God's justice.
Literally the justification of God.
Yeah.
He is acting as the defense attorney for the creator. He's standing there in the cosmic courtroom and saying, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, despite the bloody history of the world, my client is innocent.
And he has a closing argument that has become so famous. It's a phrase that I think most people know, even if they've never heard of Leibniz. It's the kind of phrase you see on, inspirational posters, or maybe more often, ironically, in memes.
The best of all possible worlds.
That's the one. And I have to say right off the bat, when I hear this is the best of all possible worlds, my immediate reaction is skepticism, bordering on anger, honestly.
Which is the normal reaction. It's the expected reaction.
I mean, really, this with the wars and the famines and, bad reality TV, this is the best the Almighty could come up with. It sounds like a cruel joke.
It does. And that's exactly why Voltaire famously tore this idea apart in his book Candide.
Right. I was just thinking of that.
He wrote Candide specifically to mock Leibniz. He has this character, Dr. Pangloss, who walks around witnessing the most horrific tragedies, earthquakes, hangings, disease, and just keeps smiling and saying, all is for the best and the best of all possible worlds. It makes Leibniz sound like a delusional optimist who just refuses to see reality.
But that's not what Leibniz was doing, was it? He wasn't a fool.
Far from it. Leibniz was arguably the smartest man in Europe at the time. He invented calculus independently of Newton. He was a diplomat, a historian, an engineer. He wasn't saying everything is pleasant or everything is wonderful. He was making a very rigorous, almost cold mathematical argument about the nature of possibility and necessity.
So our job today is to steelman that argument. We need to put aside the mockery and really try to understand why a certified genius would think this broken world is actually the optimal one.
We have to look at the architecture of his logic, because if you grant him his premises, his starting points, the conclusion actually follows. It's kind of terrifyingly logical.
Okay. Before we get to the architecture, let's set the scene a little. It's 1710, the Enlightenment is kicking off, science is exploding, but religion is still the dominant framework for everything. Who is Leibniz fighting against here? Because usually these big books are written to take someone down.
Absolutely. And in this case, the main antagonist is a French philosopher named Pierre Bayle.
And what was Bayle's deal?
Bayle was a brilliant skeptic. He wrote this massive book, The Historical and Critical Dictionary. And his main point when it came to evil was that faith and reason are enemies. They are fundamentally at odds.
How so?
He looked at the world and said, if you try to use logic to explain what you see, all the suffering and cruelty, you will inevitably end up a Manichaean.
Manichaeism, that's the ancient heresy, right?
Yeah.
The dualist one?
Right. The idea that there isn't just one God, but two rival gods of equal power, one good, one evil. Bayle argued that if you look at the sheer volume of suffering in the world, the only logical conclusion is that the good God has an evil rival who is just as strong.
So he's saying the evidence points to a cosmic stalemate.
Precisely. And he argued that if you want to remain a monotheist, a Christian, you have to abandon logic. You have to shut your eyes and just believe. It's a leap of faith over a chasm of reason.
So Bayle's basically saying choose. You can be smart or you can be religious. You can't be both.
Exactly. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And Leibniz hated that. Absolutely hated it.
Why? What was at stake for him?
Because Leibniz was a rationalist to his core. He believed that God is the supreme reason, that the universe is fundamentally intelligible. If you have to abandon reason to believe in God, then God becomes a tyrant or a chaos monster.
Not a perfect being.
Not at all. So Leibniz's mission was to prove the conformity of faith with reason. He wanted to show that the traditional Christian view of God is actually the most rational, the most logical system possible.
That is a bold claim. He's not just looking for a loophole to get God off the hook. He's trying to build a fortress of logic.
And he does it by acting like an architect. He starts before the creation of the world. He tries to take us into the mind of God.
Okay, let's go there. This is the architecture of the best world. How does Leibniz imagine the creative process? Because most people just think, God said, let there be light, and boom, we're done.
Leibniz slows it all down. He says we have to distinguish between two faculties in God, his understanding and his will. This is absolutely crucial to getting his point.
Break that down for me. What is God's understanding?
God's understanding is the realm of eternal verities. Think of it as the collection of all ideas that are logically possible. It's like an infinite library of blueprints for universes.
Okay, I'm picturing endless rows of scrolls or something.
Right. And on these scrolls are the designs for every possible universe. There's a universe where gravity pushes things up instead of pulling them down. That's logically possible. It doesn't violate logic like a square circle would.
So a universe where humans have wings is in there?
Yep. There's a universe where humans have wings. There's a universe where the Roman Empire never fell. There's a universe where I had tea instead of coffee this morning. An infinite number.
An infinite number of these possible worlds.
Infinite, because there are infinite combinations of events. But, and this is the key, they can't all exist together. A world where Caesar crosses the Rubicon and a world where Caesar doesn't cross the Rubicon cannot be the same world. They are mutually exclusive possibilities.
Okay, so God is standing in this infinite library looking at all these potential scripts for reality. He's browsing the options.
Yes, that is his understanding. He sees them all. He sees how they play out from the Big Bang to the final heat death. Then comes the second faculty, his will. The will is the active power that chooses which blueprint to make actual, to pull one of those scrolls out of the realm of ideas and give it existence.
And this leads us to what you call the argument of choice.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The argument is simple but powerful. God is all-powerful, so he can create any of these possible worlds. God is all-knowing, so he knows exactly what is in every single blueprint. And God is all-good.
So he wants the best one.
He must choose the best one. This relies on what Leibniz calls the principle of sufficient reason.
Which
It means nothing happens without a reason, especially not an act of God. God is not a random number generator. He's not flipping a cosmic coin to decide which universe to create. If God acts, he acts for a reason. So if he chooses world A over world B, there must be a reason world A is preferable. If there were a world that was even slightly better than this one, say, one with one less child getting cancer, one more act of kindness, and God didn't choose it, he would be lacking.
Lacking how?
If he didn't know about that better world, he lacks wisdom. If he knew it was better but didn't want it, he lacks goodness. If he wanted it but couldn't make it, he lacks power. Since Leibniz defines God as a being who lacks nothing, a perfect being, the conclusion is locked in. The world we are in must be the best one that was logically possible to create.
Okay, hold on. I can hear the listeners screaming at their phone right now. They're saying, that's a nice, neat syllogism, expert. But have you seen the news? Have you visited a burn unit? If this is the best, then good has lost all meaning. It feels like gaslighting. Don't worry, your suffering is actually optimal.
And Leibniz knows this. He's not naive. He knows that the empirical evidence, the stuff we see and feel, looks terrible, so he has to explain what evil actually is and how it fits. He categorizes it into 3 types to show how it sneaks into the best world.
All right, lay them on me. What are the 3 types of evil?
The first, and the foundation for the others, is metaphysical evil.
That sounds like a supervillain name. Metaphysical evil.
It does, but it's actually the most boring and the most fundamental. Metaphysical evil is simply imperfection. It is the fact that we are finite creatures.
So just being human is a type of evil.
In a technical, philosophical sense, yes. Because we are not God. God is infinite and perfect. If God creates something, that thing cannot be God. Therefore, it must be limited. It must be less than perfect. It can't know everything. It can't be everywhere at once.
It's like the resolution on a photo. If you take a photo, it has pixels. It has a limit. You can't just zoom in forever and get more detail.
That's a perfect analogy. And that limitation, that pixelation, is the root of all other evils. Because we are limited, we make mistakes. Because we are limited, we are fragile and can get sick. Leibniz argues that God could not create a world without metaphysical evil, because that would mean creating another God, which is a logical contradiction.
Okay, I can accept that I'm not God, that's fine. But what about the second type? The one that actually hurts?
Physical evil. This is what we normally think of as evil. Pain, suffering, disease, grief, earthquakes, floods.
Now, surely God could have made a world with less of that. Why do we need bone cancer? Why do we need tsunamis that kill hundreds of thousands of people?
Leibniz gives 2 main answers here. First, he makes the more traditional argument that physical evil is often a penalty for sin or a form of correction. It's a teaching tool.
That feels a bit harsh. You know, I gave you the plague to teach you humility.
It is harsh. It's not his strongest point, in my opinion. But his second answer is much more interesting. He argues that physical evil is an unavoidable byproduct of the laws of nature. And this is where he gets into the general will versus the particular will.
Explain that distinction for me.
God wills the general laws of the universe. For example, he wills the laws of physics, thermodynamics, gravity, and weather. These general laws are good because they create order and predictability. They allow for agriculture, for architecture, for life itself. Rain is generally good. It waters the earth.
Right.
But the same law that makes rain water the crops also means that if it rains too much in one place, you get a flood. The same law of gravity that keeps you grounded means that if a rock falls on your head, it kills you.
So the suffering is basically collateral damage of the system working correctly.
Yes, exactly. And Leibniz argues that a world with consistent, elegant laws, even if they sometimes hurt people, is infinitely better and more perfect than a chaotic world where God has to intervene every 5 seconds to stop a rock from falling or a virus from replicating.
Because if he did that, we wouldn't live in a universe. We'd live in a cosmic nursery with padded walls.
Exactly. There would be no science, no cause and effect, no meaningful action. It would be a perpetual miracle, which Leibniz thinks is actually an imperfect, clunky way to run a universe. He thinks a watchmaker who makes a watch that runs perfectly on its own is much smarter than a watchmaker who has to reach in and move the hands every single hour.
Okay, so we have imperfection and we have the unfortunate side effects of physics. But what about the big one? The one that humans are directly responsible for?
Moral evil, sin, wickedness, murder, theft, cruelty, betrayal.
This is the one that's hardest to swallow for me. Because if God designed us, and he designed the blueprint for the world where I'd choose to rob a bank, isn't he the author of the robbery? Didn't he basically make me do it?
This is where Leibniz deploys his most famous and perhaps his most difficult analogy, the boat analogy.
The boat. Set this up for us.
Okay. Imagine a river with a strong current. The current is moving steadily downstream. Now, you place several different boats in this river. Some are empty and light. They move very fast, almost at the speed of the current itself. Others are heavily laden with cargo stones, lead, whatever. They move much more slowly.
Okay, I'm with you. A river, some boats, some are heavy.
In this analogy, the current represents God. It is the source of all power, all energy, all action, and perfection in the universe. Without the current, the boats don't move at all. They're just dead in the water.
So God provides the go juice for the universe, the momentum.
Right. But the boats represent creatures like us, and the cargo represents our metaphysical evil, our limitation, our imperfection, our natural heaviness, our drag.
So the boat is slow because of the cargo, not because of the river.
Exactly. Leibniz says, God is the cause of the perfection in the action, the movement, the speed. But the creature's own limitation, the cargo, is the cause of the defect in the action, the slowness.
So when I do something bad, God provided the energy for me to act, but my own flawed, heavy nature is what caused the action to be a sin.
Yes. Evil is what he calls a privation. It's not a positive thing that God created. It's a lack of something. A lack of direction, a lack of goodness, a lack of speed. Just like cold isn't really a thing, it's just the absence of heat. Slowness isn't a force the river applies, it's the resistance of the boat. God gives the energy. We provide the resistance that turns that energy into sin.
That is incredibly clever. It completely shifts the blame to the shape of the creature, while keeping God as the pure power source. But it still begs the question, why make the boat so heavy in the first place? Why not just make us all light, fast boats?
Because then we would all be angels. We're gods. And the best possible world, in his view, requires variety. It requires a hierarchy of beings, from the simplest organism to the most complex spirit. A rich tapestry.
And this leads to his holistic argument. The idea that you can't just judge the parts in isolation. You have to look at the whole picture.
Right. This is the look at the whole painting argument. Leibniz says the universe is all of one piece, like an ocean. The slightest movement of a drop of water here sends a ripple that eventually affects everything over there.
The butterfly effect.
Centuries before chaos theory, yes. He argues that because everything is so deeply interconnected, God didn't choose events one by one. He didn't say, okay, I'll have a war here and a birthday party there. He chose the entire sequence from beginning to end as a single package deal.
So you can't just edit the script. You can't say, I like this world, but let's just take out World War II.
You can't. He uses the analogy of a library. You can't judge the quality of a massive library by pulling one book off the shelf, seeing it has a tragic ending or an ugly cover, and saying, this is a trash library. You have to look at the entire collection. Does the collection as a whole contain the maximum possible amount of knowledge and beauty?
Or a symphony. That seems like a good one, too.
A symphony is a great example. If you isolate the cello line in a dark, tense moment of a piece, it might sound dissonant. It might sound jarring and ugly on its own. But that dissonance is required to make the resolution into the major chord feel so beautiful and triumphant.
So Leibniz is telling us that our suffering, our wars, our personal pain are the dissonant notes in a cosmic symphony that we're too close to hear properly.
Yes. He thinks we are like ants standing on a vast, complex Persian rug. We see a chaotic mess of colors and threads right in front of us. We don't see the pattern. But if we could zoom out to God's perspective, we would see that the dark threads are necessary to make the gold threads pop. Shadows enhance colors. Dissonance enhances harmony.
That is a beautiful idea, but also a terrifying one. It means I might be the shadow. My purpose in the grand scheme might be to be the dark spot that makes someone else's life shine.
It creates a sense of cosmic duty, but it definitely strips away your main character energy. You are a component in a machine designed for universal maximization, not necessarily for your personal comfort.
Let's pivot to the mechanism of how we fit into this machine. Because if God chose the whole script, every ripple in the ocean, before the world even began, do I actually have free will? Or am I just an actor playing out a pre-recorded part?
This is the massive problem of fatalism, and it was a huge debate in his time. There was this idea called the lazy reason that people used to argue against fate.
The lazy reason. I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
You would. It's the argument that goes something like this. If it is fated that I will die today, then I will die whether I go to the doctor or not. And if it is fated that I will live whether I go to the doctor or not. So why bother going to the doctor? It makes no difference. I'll just stay in bed.
I mean, logically, if the future is set in stone, my actions don't seem to change the outcome.
But Leibniz says this logic is completely flawed. He says it misunderstands what fated or foreseen actually means. He says events are fated along with their causes.
What does that mean, along with their causes?
It means it was never fated that you will get well, period. It was fated that you will get well because you went to the doctor. The act of going to the doctor is part of the causal chain that leads to the fated outcome. If you choose to stay in bed, you are simply fulfilling a different fated chain, the one where you die because you didn't go. You can't separate the end from the means.
So we still have to do the work. The script includes my effort, my choices.
Exactly. We are not puppets on strings. We are actors who must say our lines and perform our actions for the play to move forward as written.
But are we free when we say those lines? That's the real question.
This brings us to a really technical but absolutely essential distinction Leibniz makes between different types of necessity. If you don't get this, you don't really get Leibniz on free will.
Okay, walk us through it.
First, there is absolute or geometrical necessity. This is the necessity of pure logic. 2 + 2 must equal 4. A triangle must have 3 sides. The opposite of these things is a logical contradiction. It is impossible. Even God cannot make a square circle.
Okay, that's hard-coded into reality.
Then there is hypothetical necessity. This applies to events in the world. For example, let's take the statement, the expert speaker drinks coffee this morning. Was that necessary?
Well, you did it. And if God is all-knowing, he knew you would do it since the dawn of time.
Right. So given the hypothesis that God foresaw it, it is certain I will do it. It cannot fail to happen. But, and here is the savior of free will, is the opposite, logically impossible.
Does the expert speaker drinks tea create a logical contradiction like a square circle?
No. Not at all. It's logically possible. I could have drunk tea. My nature, my preference for coffee, my tiredness, all these things led me to choose coffee. I was, as he puts it, inclined without being necessitated.
So you were free because the choice came from your internal nature, even if that choice was perfectly predictable to an all-knowing being.
Yes. Freedom, for Leibniz, isn't randomness. It isn't being able to flip a coin in your head. It's acting according to your own internal reason and inclination.
This reminds me of that old thought experiment about the donkey. Burden's ass?
Yes. This is his favorite way to attack the idea that freedom means a perfect 50-50 balance. Some people think you are only free if you are in a state of what they called indifference of equipoise, where you have absolutely no reason to pick A over B.
Like a perfect coin flip, no bias.
Right. So the thought experiment is, take a donkey, a perfectly rational donkey. Place him exactly equidistant between 2 absolutely identical piles of hay. They smell the same, look the same, everything. If the donkey acts only on reason and there is no reason whatsoever to pick left over right, what happens?
He starves to death, standing in the middle.
Correct. He stands there frozen by indecision until he dies. Then Leibniz says, this is a fiction. This never happens in reality.
Why not?
Because there is no such thing as identical in the real world.
No.
Maybe the left pile has a slightly sweeter scent that wafts over first. Maybe the light from the sun hits the right pile a little better. Maybe the donkey has a slight cramp in his left leg, so he instinctively leans right. There's always a micro reason, a sufficient reason that tips the scale, even if we aren't conscious of it.
So we never act randomly. We always follow the strongest inclination, even if it's a tiny one.
Always. And that inclination is what makes us free. We do what we want to do. The fact that God knows what we want to do doesn't make us slaves. It just makes him incredibly observant.
Okay, so we have a kind of freedom. But how does this connect to the body? If my soul is this free-thinking thing, and my body is a machine made of meat, how do they talk to each other? This is the famous mind-body problem.
And this is where Leibniz gets really, really sci-fi for his time. He completely rejects the common idea that the soul pushes the body around.
Picard thought the soul sort of wiggled the pineal gland in the brain, right?
He did, but that breaks the laws of physics, like the conservation of energy. You can't just have a non-physical ghost add new energy into a closed physical system. Leibniz also rejects a theory called occasionalism, which was the idea that God acts as a constant middleman, I think move arm, and God then moves my arm for me.
That makes God into a cosmic puppeteer for every single action.
Exactly, and Leibniz finds that undignified and inefficient. So he proposes his own theory, pre-established harmony.
The clocks.
The clocks. Imagine 2 perfect clocks. They are constructed by a master artisan. They tell the exact same time, down to the millisecond, but they are not connected. There is no wire between them, no gears meshing. They are on opposite sides of the room.
Okay. 2 perfect separate clocks.
One clock represents the soul with all its thoughts, feelings, and decisions. The other represents the body with all its physical mechanics and chemical reactions. Leibniz says that at the moment of creation, God, the supreme artisan, programmed the soul and the body with such infinite precision that they run in perfect parallel for all time.
Wait a minute. So when I decide I want to raise my hand, my soul clock hits raise hando clock, and my body clock just happens to hit muscles contracto clock at the exact same instant.
Yeah. They don't touch. They don't interact. They just agree perfectly because they were set in motion together from the beginning.
That's insane. The level of complexity required for that, for every thought of every human to match every movement of every atom in their body for all of history is just staggering.
It is. But remember, we are dealing with an infinite God. And Leibniz argues this actually shows more skill than the other theories. A clockmaker who can make two clocks that stay synchronized forever without touching them is a far better clockmaker than one who has to connect them with a clumsy wire.
It effectively turns each of us into these solitary universes. My soul is doing its thing, my body is doing its thing, and they just happen to match up because of God's initial code.
We are spiritual automatons, as he puts it. But because the code comes from our own internal nature, we are still considered free.
All right, I need to see this in action. We've done a lot of theory. Now I want the story. I know the book ends with this famous myth, a retelling of the story of Sextus Tarquinius.
It's the climax of the book. It's where he ties all these threads together into one powerful narrative.
Set the stage for us.
So Sextus Tarquinius is a Roman prince. He goes to the oracle at Delphi and asks, "What is my fate?" The oracle says, "You will die poor and in exile." Sextus gets furious. He says, "I'm a prince. I bring you lavish gifts. Why would you do this to me?" And the oracle says, "I didn't do it. I just see the future. You carry your fate in your own heart. It's your own will that leads you there."
So Sextus storms off, angry at his fate.
Right. But then the scene shifts. A character named Theodorus, the high priest, is confused. He asks Jupiter, who represents God in the story, "Why did you make Sextus like this? Why allow a man to be born who will choose such a bad path?"
It's the problem of evil all over again, just in story form.
Exactly. So Jupiter sends Theodorus on a journey to the Palace of the Fates. This is a representation of God's understanding, that infinite library of possible worlds we talked about earlier.
And what does he see there?
He sees a giant pyramid of worlds. At the bottom are the imperfect, chaotic worlds that are barely possible. As he climbs, the worlds get better, more ordered, more perfect. And in these different worlds, he sees different versions of Sextus.
Different blueprints for his life.
Yes. He looks into one possible world and sees Sextus as a wise, just king loved by his people. He looks into another and sees Sextus as a humble merchant living a happy, quiet, virtuous life with his family.
So it was absolutely possible for Sextus to be a good person. The potential was there in God's mind.
Absolutely. The good Sextus existed as an idea. But as Theodorus climbs to the very top of the pyramid, to the apex, he sees the one world that God actually chose to create, the best of all possible worlds.
And what is Sextus doing in the best world?
He is raping Lucretia.
Whoa! Stop right there. The best possible world, the peak of the pyramid, involves a brutal sexual assault.
It does. And this is the hardest pill in the entire book to swallow. Theodorus is horrified. He asks, how can this world containing this vile crime be the top of the pyramid?
Yeah, how? What's the answer?
The answer is consequentialism on a cosmic scale. The rape of Lucretia leads directly to her suicide. Her suicide enrages the people of Rome. They rise up in fury, they overthrow the tyrannical Tarquin kings, and they establish the Roman Republic. And the Republic, with its emphasis on law and virtue, creates the foundation for the Roman Empire, which spreads civilization and law across the known world, which eventually creates the conditions for the spread of Christianity, and so on down the line.
So the argument is that the world with the Roman Republic is mathematically superior and has more total perfection than the world with good Sextus. But the world with the Republic requires the crime to act as the trigger.
Exactly. God didn't want the rape. In his antecedent will, he hates it. But he wanted the best possible world, and that's his consequent will. And since the best world includes the Roman Republic, and the Republic requires the expulsion of the kings, and the expulsion requires the crime, God permits the crime.
He permits the sin to achieve the greater good of the overall structure.
It's the necessary price of the architecture. In this grand narrative, Sextus is the dark shadow that is required to allow the brilliant light of the Roman Republic to shine. Sextus freely chose his crime. It was his nature, his lust, his arrogance. God just placed him in the slot where his evil nature would trigger a massive world-changing good.
That is cold. Incredibly efficient, but cold. It means that Lucretia had to suffer horribly so that generations later we could have the Senate.
It is cold. It treats history like a problem in geometry. It's a calculation of maximums and minimums. How do you get the maximum quantity of being and order and good in a system? Leibniz says, this path, with all its blood and horror, is the most efficient path to the maximum total perfection of the universe as a whole.
It really challenges our modern individualistic idea that I matter. To Leibniz, the system matters. I'm just a variable in a cosmic equation.
You are a variable, but you are a necessary one. The equation wouldn't be the best one without you in it, exactly as you are.
Well, this feels like the perfect time to really test this logic. We've heard the 18th century version. I want to see if it holds up when we push it with some 21st century ideas.
Let's do it.
This is our thought experiments segment. A quick disclaimer. These are purely hypothetical scenarios designed for entertainment and to stress test the philosophy we've been discussing. Do not try this at home, especially if you happen to be a super intelligent AI.
A very fair warning.
Okay. Experiment number 1. I call it the moral calculus AI.
I'm listening.
Imagine we build a supercomputer, a benevolent AI, tasked with managing a city. Let's call it Leibnizville. Its single prime directive is maximize total joy. Not just comfort or contentment, but deep, meaningful joy.
Okay, a utilitarian AI.
At first, the AI eliminates all problems. Traffic is perfect, the weather is controlled, it's always 72 degrees and sunny, food is free and delicious, no one gets sick.
Sounds like a paradise.
For about a week. But then, the city's joy score starts to flatline. People get bored, they get entitled, they get what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. They just adapt to the perfection and they stop feeling it. The total joy of the city actually drops because nobody appreciates anything anymore.
This become a world of spoiled brats with no perspective.
Exactly. So the AI runs the numbers. It recalculates. It realizes that to get high joy peaks, it needs contrast. So it introduces minor inconvenience Tuesdays.
Oh no, I don't like where this is going.
On Tuesdays, the bus is 5 minutes late, the Wi-Fi is a little spotty, it rains for an hour in the afternoon, and the AI calculates that the collective sigh of relief people feel on Wednesday morning, the "oh, thank God the internet works properly again" feeling, generates more net joy over the week than 7 days of planned perfection.
That makes a perverse kind of sense. We often define happiness by the absence of the negative.
But then the AI goes further. It runs trillions of simulations and realizes that the highest, most profound form of human joy comes from triumph over real adversity. You can't feel the joy of triumph if you don't have a genuine struggle. So the AI starts introducing actual risks. It allows a certain carefully controlled amount of crime. It allows a flu season to happen. It calculates that the community bonding, the heroism of doctors and neighbors, and the profound relief of recovery that happen during these crises create a total perfection score for the city that is 1,000 times higher than the safe zone ever was.
This is exactly Leibniz's argument in modern terms. Oh, Felix culpa. Oh, happy fault. The idea that the fall of man was necessary to allow for the redemption. The AI isn't being evil, it's being a ruthless optimizer.
But if you are the guy who gets the flu or the person whose apartment gets robbed, you hate the AI, you call it evil. But from the control room, the AI is just looking at the master spreadsheet and saying, I'm doing this for the stat sheet, we're winning.
Yeah.
The overall joy score is through the roof.
It perfectly highlights the clash between the individual perspective, the particular will, and the system perspective, the general will. We live our lives in the particular. God, or in this case the AI, sees the general.
All right. Experiment number 2. Let's go back to Sextus. I call this one the virtual Sextus.
Okay.
You are a programmer building a simulation. Like the films, but the characters have genuine consciousness. Your goal is to build a world that generates a beautiful, complex, emergent story about the rise of democracy.
A noble goal for a simulation.
You realize that you can't just code democracy into existence from the start. It has to evolve naturally. For it to evolve, there needs to be a tyrant to overthrow. So you create a character. Let's call him Sim Sextus.
Okay.
In his character creation screen, you have a slider for his aggression stat. If you set it to 0, he's a perfectly nice guy. He probably opens a bakery.
Yeah.
But the simulation gets boring. There's no conflict, no revolution, no grand story of democracy. The code stagnates and the simulation crashes.
The world fails to achieve its purpose.
Right. So to save the world, to make it the best possible simulation, you must slide that aggression stat up to 10. You don't write a script that says go commit a crime at 3 p.m. You just give him the nature that makes him intensely aggressive. And, with 100% certainty that given the circumstances you've also programmed, he will inevitably do something terrible.
This is the hypothetical necessity again. Given his nature, he will act. It's not absolute, but it's certain.
You hit run. Sim Sextus commits his crime. The other Sims rise up in anger. Democracy is born. The simulation is a masterpiece of emergent storytelling. Now, here's the question. Are you, the programmer, guilty of the crime Sim Sextus committed?
Leibniz would say no. You are responsible for the structure that required that kind of character for the story to work. But the guilt of the act itself belongs to the idea of Sextus. You didn't force his hand. You just actualized the version of him that was necessary for the plot. You permitted it.
It's the author defense. Is Shakespeare guilty of murder because he wrote Macbeth? No. But Macbeth had to kill King Duncan for the play to be a masterpiece.
It implies that we are all characters in a story that is grander than we can possibly imagine. And our flaws, even our worst sins, might be essential plot points.
That brings us towards the end. And I think we need to leave the listener with a final thought to chew on, something to take away from all this.
I think we should talk about scale, cosmic scale.
Go on.
Leibniz often reminds his readers that our planet Earth is a speck of dust in the cosmos. We naturally assume that we are the center of the story. We assume that the best possible world means the best possible world for humans on Earth.
But the universe is mostly empty space and burning gas and things we can't even comprehend.
Exactly. Leibniz suggests that maybe, just maybe, the evil on Earth, all our wars, all our suffering, all our history, is the dissonant note required to make the music of the rest of the galaxy perfect.
Oh, wow. That is a haunting thought.
What if our planet is the sewer of the universe, as some ancient philosophers actually thought? What if our chaos and pain allows for a perfect, crystalline civilization of beings in the Andromeda galaxy to exist in perpetual harmony? What if the best world calculation requires one planet to suffer terribly so that 1 billion others can thrive?
That completely turns the popular idea of his optimism on its head. It means the system is perfect, but we drew the short straw. We are the designated losers of the perfect system.
It's a logical possibility within his framework. Does it comfort you to know that you might be suffering for the greater good of some alien civilization you'll never meet? Or does it terrify you?
I think it terrifies me. But it certainly makes you look up at the stars a little differently.
It certainly does.
On that massive and, slightly existential note, we're going to wrap up. We've gone from the mind of God to the Roman Republic to a tyrannical AI.
Just another day in the 18th century.
Thank you for joining us on Talk Treatises. Keep looking for the sufficient reason in everything.
Until next time.